Great, great. Can everybody hear me now? Any others?
Same voice, we said respect, neutrality, understanding.
Great. So you nailed them all, that is correct. Essentially, this is based on a body of work done by Dr. Tom Tyler, as Judge Pratt explained this morning. And the long and short of it is that the body of research that he did showed that if people felt that they were heard, that they understood what happened, and that they were respected in the process of coming to court, that they felt satisfied with their experience in court even more than the outcome in their case, whether they won or lost their case. So these are the 4 pillars of procedural justice. We really tried to incorporate these into our courthouse design as we were looking at, at the concepts to incorporate. So in terms of how my slides are turning on their own. In terms of how to embody neutrality in a... Do we know how to stop the slides from going on their own?
Are they going on their own?
Yeah. Yep. The slides are advancing on their own. This way. There we go.
So yeah, just be careful with how they're pretty sensitive.
Okay.
I don't know.
There you go. Okay, apologies for that. So to embody neutrality in a courthouse design, really where we focused is transparency and making sure that the courthouse was easy to navigate and understand. Again, not touching it. Let's try here. Respect is, we really wanted to respect the way that people were entering our courthouse. Look, hands up here, wasn't touching anything, promise. Not sure about that. But we wanted to really come at the approach to the courthouse with the understanding of how people are entering the courthouse. People are coming to court on some of their most difficult days. There may be very difficult life decisions that are going to be made for them. They may be facing jail or prison. They may be facing loss of custody of a child, also protective custody, protective proceedings. All sorts of really difficult things can happen at court. And so we want to make sure that the experience of somebody coming into the courthouse is going to de-escalate the anxiety that they're feeling rather than heighten that. This is our, I'll just jump ahead to, this is the courthouse that we were in for over 100 years in our county. This is the courthouse that we were replacing. This was, as probably many of your courthouses are currently, not designed to meet 21st century needs. As you can see, it was built in 1909. And so a lot of the features as the use of that courthouse had expanded through the years made it very crowded and really didn't allow for a lot of the space and the areas that would be dedicated to addressing those aspects of procedural justice. For example, think about people coming into the courthouse in this building. There was no area for security, screening, essentially no lobby space because you entered the building into a hallway. So people would stand in line outside the building waiting to enter. They would, as soon as they entered the doors of the courthouse, which were large with solid wooden doors that you couldn't see through, they would be encountered with security personnel who would be taking them through the magnetometers, the x-ray machines, that sort of thing. And it was a really crowded area where people were putting belts back on, putting shoes back on, and that was the very first experience for anybody entering the courthouse. So instead of helping them to feel more calm, we were actually heightening their anxiety. Good grief. Okay, so when we were embarking on this project, the big motivator for the funders of this project was seismic safety. We had a courthouse that was in a Cascadia earthquake zone where we are predicted to have a major earthquake. This courthouse had hollow masonry bricks and no seismic reinforcement, so it was really in danger of falling down in even a small earthquake. That was the motivator for the funders of the project, the legislature essentially, and the other officials who were allocating the funding. But what it gave us the opportunity to do was to really reimagine how we were providing service in that courthouse. No, it doesn't turn. Okay. So one of the first, my apologies, I don't know what's going on. We really have a lot of lovely slides to show you, but they are, okay. Site selection was one of the very first pieces of the project. And so we really wanted to find a site that improved access to the building, that was in the downtown corridor, that was convenient to public transportation hubs, that was a prominent location that people could find. And so that was one of the really critical pieces. And there were a lot of considerations in terms of access for law enforcement, access to the jails. There was the desire by some of the stakeholders to have a courthouse that was located more conveniently to some of the other jails in the county or further away in a more easterly part of our county. And keeping it in the corridor really helped to allow the people who are most in need of use of that courthouse to have really direct access. This is the location. You can see the red area is showing where we were located. The courthouse is located directly on the Willamette River. These are just some beauty shots showing you the views as you're looking west from our courthouse. We are fortunate to have a view of Mountain Hood from that aspect. This is showing the footprint of our courthouse, and the entrance to the courthouse is at the northwest corner of the courthouse. So the court faces west to the river. That's the river side, and then the easterly facing side is where you enter the courthouse. The court entry is a 3-story glass corner, so all sides are glass, and it really does physically embody transparency. As you're entering the courthouse, you know what you're going into. As you think about those solid wooden doors in a big marble building that we had before, here you can, as you're crossing the street, entering the steps of the courthouse, you can get a glimpse of what's going on inside, where you're going to be going once you get in there. An aspect that was really important to the city of Portland was pedestrian improvement. Goodness. So this is the first floor of the courthouse and the sidewalks surrounding that first floor. The goal of the city initially was to, in order to improve that pedestrian experience, to offer retail on the first floor of the courthouse and to have windows that could look into the courthouse from the sidewalks. That was a real concern to those of us who were working on the design because the first floor of the courthouse needed to accommodate detention space for people coming in custody. Obviously, windows looking into detention holding areas is not an ideal thing. And then when you think about retail in a first floor of a courthouse with all of the courtrooms above it, somebody with no security in a retail area, somebody could leave a backpack, anything that could be explosive and really put the entire courthouse at risk. So we wanted to have the entire courthouse perimeter secure. Frank, anything you want to add about the covers to the windows here?
Opportunity to create a location for artworks, and those large doors were actually the vehicular sally port, a drive-through vehicular sally port. So we took something that's utilitarian and secure and back of house and turned it into something that's public facing and something that adds to the vitality of the streetscape. So city planning like that.
Actually, this is probably a good time to turn it over to you for a bit to
Okay.
talk about the makeup of the building.
Oops, now I'm going to go back one. So I think this is all my fault, by the way, as usual. That's what I'm here for. No, the slideshow was originally set up to automatically advance. I thought I had turned that feature off. Clearly, I did not. So anyway, and poor Barb had to suffer the consequences. So I was so inspired by Judge Pratt's presentation this morning. Now she took what we thought we were going to be talking about it and just made it spectacular. I mean, she took it and expanded it and personalized it in ways that are really tremendous. But I was struck as I was sitting there that everything that she was doing, all of this wonderful work that she's doing, was taking place in that old courthouse. That it was all make do, work around, and everything that she was doing and all the effectiveness and the positive outcomes of those interactions were very much related to human interaction, the way you speak to someone, the way you show them that you care and show respect, et cetera. So what we were doing here is kind of the flip side of that. We were taking all those principles and as espoused by Judge Waller and by Barb, and say, how do you make a building out of that? How do you make a building that expresses procedural justice? So that's a little bit what I'm going to talk about today. You can see, for instance, this is the building on its site. It fills up the entire site. And Portland, Oregon is 200 by 200 foot square blocks, the whole downtown, which for a courthouse with 45 courtrooms in it is tiny. So it's jammed in there. It's 17 stories high. There's absolutely no setback from the property line. There's no courthouse square. There's no public space in front of the courthouse, which is so fundamental. You just expect it. So we actually put the public space, the courthouse square, underneath the courthouse. So and we organized the building in 2 big blocks, courtrooms and judges and staff, and lifted the building up so that the public, there could be a large public space, and you could get that transparency and sense of civic grandeur or whatever, but inside the building, not in front of the building like the old building had. So lift up the block of judges and staff, and then orient the courtrooms and all the public spaces to the view. And Mount Hood is really spectacular. Snow-capped most of the summer, but certainly right now. And then take that and then create a public experience coming through the lobby that brings you to that view, to the Willamette River in the foreground, the city, the park in front, and then the view. So the idea that you have a courthouse that, I'm sorry, I saw a hand to go. Well, believe it or not, every now and then you get a clear day in Portland.
And Frank, let me just jump in real quick. We are happy to take questions. So if anything occurs to you as we're talking, feel free to jump in and ask. We'll have mics.
And we'll bring microphones around.
I was just curious, with the windows in the front, are they bullet resistant? Because I know line of sight is a big issue with a lot of our facilities.
Well, the windows in the front, you mean the public entrance?
Yes.
Well, you'll see in a minute how we manage the security screening, but they're not bullet resistant. They're very, very large windows that are laminated glass. They're abuse resistant, but it's if you're going to try to create ballistic glass on a 35-foot tall piece of glass, it's just not economic.
Because of the expense, it was cost prohibitive to have bulletproof glass. They are damage resistant, and they were tested for projectiles. We did have one break, and so we discovered that they can be broken, and that's a challenge, but only one, and we did get it replaced, and since then we haven't had any more difficulty with them.
Yeah, the idea was very much to present the building as open and welcoming and public. So immediately the procedural justice message is one that's communicated even upon approaching the building. Another piece of it, in order to keep it from advancing, I have to go back once, and that's my trick. Oops, that didn't work. So we did a very extensive study of the security screening process, because this entrance was going to be for everyone, judges, staff, and public. So we had to be able to run all those streams through so that, but again, treating people respectfully starts right at the front door, and how they're treated while they're queuing to go through screening, and not waste their time. So they can see where they're going, they can have adequate queuing inside the building instead of down the sidewalk in the Portland rain, and then a blue stream of frequent flyers. Sir? That's correct.
What you can see in the slide right here are, through the different colors, the blue route is where our judges and staff enter, and there is a glass divider in between where the judges and staff are entering and where the public are entering, but it's essentially following the same path.
Yeah, the judges are parking in a parking garage across the street. So there's no parking garage just for the judges underneath the building. There's really no basement in this building because of the subsurface conditions. So.
Hold on.
Especially hearing about court security, I'm surprised the security people and the judges didn't object to that, because you hear the opposite from security people, is they want to sort of separate that out.
They understood that there was only X dollars for the project, and it just didn't fit, and they got it. They were very much involved, and they were so desperate to get this building. They were willing to make some compromises, but they were very much team players. But you're right, it's unusual in a courthouse.
We'll talk a little bit further in the presentation about the separation of the circulation systems in the building. So contrary to the historic courthouse that we were in before, this building has private security, private areas for staff and judges, secure areas for people in custody, and then public areas. So those paths don't necessarily cross in the building, but there is just one main entrance.
Right. What you'll see, that green area that you see to the right there is a garden that's immediately outside the security screening area. And that actually, the garden is where the judges enter. They come through the garden and then around the back. So they're actually not in the building mixing with the people in this secure line. And we did a number of animations that show how all of that works. But really the big move here, the big procedural justice piece is for the public, that when they enter the building and they're going to their destination, all the clerk counters, all the high volume courts, jury assembly, even the coffee shop happens along this one route. It's a big giant space with very welcoming stairways and elevators, of course, with the drop dead view at the end of it. So it's all set up for the public to say, wow, every time they come to the building. So this is what people see after they've passed through security. There's an information desk, there's a whole series of monitors, and then there's the stair that tells you, obviously that's where you would go next, right? Because there's nothing else on this floor. If you're going to a courtroom for a trial, you get on the elevators because it's a tall building. But if you're there to transact, it's very much like a shopping mall experience, if you will. It's all right there in front of you, and you can go left, you can go right, you can go up.
Can you pause for a second here?
Sure.
In the slide snafu, I didn't get an opportunity to tell you, one of the initial things we did sort of simultaneous with our site selection was we had the Center for Court Innovation come in and do a site assessment for us, and really identified in our historic courthouse as well as in our other court facilities. This is one of our 5 courthouses. Looking at how we were doing business, they observed court proceedings, they observed our customer service counters, they looked at our signage, they talked to our staff and our judges, and then they provided us with a report that really identified and pointed out the things that were ripe for improvement, if you will, things that were not meeting our standards for how we were delivering service. And so in the course of that, many of those things were things we already knew, but hadn't really been able to work on until we had this opportunity to design a new building. So what you're seeing right here, the first 3 floors of the building were intentionally designed to incorporate the aspects of service that happen most frequently. So the highest demand things that people are in the courthouse for are on the lowest floors of the building. primarily just to make it easier for them to navigate. So we have our customer service areas in a centralized location as opposed to just randomly located around the building. We have our jury services on the 3rd floor, and we have a central staircase that goes up the first 3 floors, making it really easy for people to see where they're going in those really busy, high-volume areas. Most of the courtrooms are on the higher floors, but those are the hallways and spaces that are less fully occupied typically.
Great. So again, looking up the stairs, there's basically kind of a target that you get to. At the top of the stairs is the jury assembly space overlooking the river. It's not really red. That's just to show you to look here. But it's all basically glassy, transparent, really easy to navigate with really strong kind of graphics. Looking back the other way, that's where we came from. Wood ceiling, natural materials. One really challenging factor is halfway through design, the county's project manager said, "Oh, good news. Remember that historic building that was on the corner that we weren't sure if we could get or not? Well, we got it. And so we're going to change the project to include 4 high-volume courts that were in the municipal courts. We're going to bring those to this project, and you get to design those as well." I was like, "Oh, good. It means we can start again," which just for the base. So it was really cool. So traffic, landlord, tenant, small claims, and traffic arraignment, I guess, we're all located in this really cool National Historic Register building that had formerly been the transformer station for the streetcars in Portland. So it's an industrial space, and you can see in the back of the photo on the right is a large crane with a hook on it. And it was the only piece of the original building interiors that was left. So there was some debate as when we were installing courtrooms like this, would a crane have place in a courthouse? Well, you can see the hook in the background of the image on the left. So it wasn't sort of a threat or an implied outcome or anything, but it was just a nice piece of historic fabric to keep and a little bit of chuckle. But
if I can explain a little bit more about what's going on in this space that we fondly call the crane room, because these are our high volume areas, as Frank was saying, there are a lot of people there who have to negotiate. So for small claims, parties need to determine if they can reach a resolution. For traffic citations and parking citations, often an officer has advised the defendant that if they take a class, they would be willing to dismiss or reduce the charges or something like that. And so negotiation has to happen. In our historic courthouse, that all happened within the courtroom. So all the parties arrived, tried to find their opposing party, tried to have those conversations in the same room that everybody else was having those conversations, and the judge was getting ready to start proceedings. Not ideal by any stretch. Again, when you're trying to de-escalate tensions, help people calm down so they can address their court matters, making a really chaotic environment for them to wait in is not the ideal area. So what we did here is we created a space that has some semblance of privacy, a lot of different little areas with alcoves and tables and clusters of seating so that people have areas where they can get out of the courtroom, have those important conversations, and the courtrooms are smaller. They're not meant to hold everybody appearing for that entire morning. They're meant to hold just 8 to 10 parties. So people can have those conversations outside of the courtroom and come into the courtroom after they're ready to address the judge.
Yeah, because the previous model had been very large courtrooms, tiny little hallway outside. So everybody that had to report it for 10 o'clock on Friday, the whatever, sat in the courtroom and listened to everybody else's matter before their matter came up. What this allowed the court to do was say, show up, we're going to try to resolve your matter out here in this waiting room, and then when you're finished, you go into the courtroom and see if the judge will accept your outcome, which they probably would.
Go ahead, I think we have a question over here.
So I see that your setting is normal. Do you plan on going virtual for those who can come in person?
So a lot of what you're seeing was the design of the courthouse, which was pre-pandemic. And so we hadn't incorporated remote hearings as a normal way of proceeding. It was really, we'd have a few witnesses appear remotely or, only for special circumstances. Of course, that all changed during the pandemic and we opened this building in 2020. So we immediately started utilizing our spaces and our technology in different ways than we'd envisioned. I was explaining to Frank some of the spaces that we had planned, we've never used them for the designs that or so far, we've been operating this building now, we're in our 5th year, but have yet to use them in the way that they were originally planned or envisioned. But we really did a good job, and the architects did an amazing job of helping us future-proof the building by making it flexible with the technology that we had. So we definitely are using remote hearings. We have a lot of those courtrooms that you're seeing in this crane room. The parties are appearing remotely, and there's just a judge and a clerk in the courtroom.
Right. Very fortunate that we invested in technology going
Very
in. We had
fortunate,
no
very
idea
fortunate, yeah.
that it was going to be used as much as it is. So again, the idea is a beautiful building on a city park at a gateway to the city, one that's beautiful by day, beautiful by night, and a building that would never have another building built in front of it. So it had better look good for a long time. So that was the rendering. This is the reality. This is
Can you go back to that slide?
This one? This one?
Back one more. Yep, forward. Sorry. The one that you see the entrance.
The
One more.
entrance.
Okay, the very next one.
This one?
Yes.
Okay, the lobby.
Wanted to point out here, this is the slides that you were seeing prior to this were the drawings, the conceptual drawings, the architectural drawings. These are actual photographs of the building in its finished product. And what you're seeing on the right-hand side is the actual entrance. Compare that to what I was describing, the entrance to our historic courthouse, where you arrive, you open those wooden doors, you're confronted immediately by security personnel. There's no space to collect your thoughts, much less your belongings. Here, what you're doing is entering through a queued waiting area. We have videos that are welcoming people coming into the courthouse, explaining what our different departments are offering, how they can get assistance, explaining the concept of procedural fairness and that we are here to treat them with respect and to listen to our customers. And then when they come around the corner after they've cleared security, what you're seeing on the left-hand side is an actual lobby. So there's a space where you can sit down, you can meet somebody that is meeting you at court, you can collect your belongings, you can get your paperwork together before you head upstairs to a courtroom. Much better in terms of how somebody enters the experience of coming to court.
And just the whole notion of celebrating the courthouse as an important civic building, that's an artwork, needless to say, on the wall, a glass artwork. That's not a painting. That's an extraordinary piece of work. But the building is full of art. Is it the Portland Museum or
It's the Regional Arts and Culture Council that
they contributed 75 paintings or something like that to the building.
Yeah,
at least?
There's a 1% for art budget that's mandated in the area where we are, and so there was a very large. This was an expensive building, so there was a very large public art budget for this building.
And
so
they cleared out all their
magnificent
storerooms,
works.
and there's art everywhere in this building.
But it's another
extraordinary.
way that we're conveying respect for the people who are
Right.
coming to court, because we really wanted the people coming to court to see themselves in our building. And so we have a lot of art from indigenous cultures, from different areas of the community. And we have a lot of art that was created specifically commemorating the geographic features in Multnomah County and the Pacific Northwest.
Roger?
And as one of the employees that enters this building every day, in addition to the public, it welcomes the employees. So every day, I've worked there for 30 years, so 25 of my years were in that old, decrepit building. And every day when I walk into the new building, I feel welcome. I walk in, I have Barb's voice on one of those screens saying, "I am the trial court administrator. I welcome you to the courthouse." And we have judges saying, "We will treat you with respect." And it's just beautiful. And it makes me feel much more valued as an employee.
Beautiful. Thank you, Roger. So this is up this flight of stairs on the left is the second floor transaction counters. This is where the clerks and where those self-represented come to these monitors and these machines. But then there's a queuing system to allow people to interact with the human being at the back of the room.
Yeah,
as well.
can I jump in here?
Sure, please.
So this, in terms of the customer experience and transparency and respect for the system, this is really an example of how we made the new building more welcoming and easier to navigate. So people really can understand what's going on in the building by all of these different terminals and the digital signage and interactive displays that we have for people to locate information. In our old courthouse, what we had were a lot of colored flyers tacked up with signs saying, do this, don't do that. I saw some of them in Judge Pratt's presentation and some of the slides that she showed this morning.
Yeah, lots of Scotch tape.
Lots of Scotch tape,
Yeah.
lots of Scotch tape. Center for Court Innovation definitely flagged that for us. And so what we have now is a whole lot of digital signage, a lot of interactive terminals for people, and a lot of space. And really the space is, I think, the biggest thing. Just the space for people to sort of decompress, collect their thoughts, and gather themselves before they move on to the next step in their court journey.
So the image on the right is the jury assembly room, which is a large space. You're seeing kind of the piece of it that overlooks the river. But again, celebrating citizens doing their jury service. How do you make people feel uplifted and respected? There's actually a little coffee shop right next door too, so you don't have to go out to a food truck or anything. And then up on the court floors, again, typical entrance on the left side around the corner. Literally the weight, the seating, and the public accommodation, if you will, is literally built in. So at every courtroom entrance, you see that B there. That's courtroom B on this floor, and it's a very, very straightforward organization of the building. Very hard to get lost in this
if you
building.
could
You
back
always
up
know
just
where
a
you
couple,
are.
one more, back up one more, please. Yeah, so if you see, oh, no,
Here?
there you go. If you see that area, that is at the southeast corner of the building. On every court floor, there's a seating area that's by the windows. And in front of each of the, essentially we have 10 floors with 4 courtrooms per floor along in a row. And the courtrooms are all interior in the building, and the hallway is with the windows. Often what you find is the judges' chambers with the windows. But what we did in this building is really reserve those views, those wonderful views we were showing you of Mount Hood earlier. Those are all reserved for the public. So jurors sitting in our jury room, people waiting to go into court, people who've just come out of court and are going through a stressful situation trying to collect themselves. We have comfortable seating and really great views, especially on a clear day.
Yeah, the judges have a view of Mount Helena, so it's not terrible, but it's a lot further away. And there's not much left of it, actually, after they exploded. So again, just the views and the courtrooms do have windows, do have daylight. So when you're in the courtroom a long time, you feel a little less taxed by the experience. Child-centered areas, both in the district attorney's space, but also a court care area that functions like a daycare center. So spaces for children, and most importantly for litigants to be able to drop off their children so they can go and take care of their matters and not be distracted by Junior, clamoring for attention.
Any questions about that? That's a really important concept for us. That's something that we've worked with the Bar Association to continue to provide in our courthouse. But for people who are coming to court and either don't have child care, or it's a child matter that they're at court for, but they really don't want to have the child in the courtroom during difficult proceedings, giving them a free area that's designed for children with fun activities for them and people who are trained in childcare is a really great service to offer people coming to court, and definitely makes them feel better about their experience. Go ahead.
So 2 things. Back on the courtroom slide, the one had that one with the windows there. Again, I'm surprised from a security point of view, they would be like that. They're talking about line of sight. Also, I think backlit from the jury, that could cause some issues. But also, like I said, you talk to police people, they'd be worried about a sniper out there trying to...
There's nobody out there. It's the tallest building.
Okay. But was there any issue about that, or...
No.
The way we have it is actually there's only one of the 4 courtrooms on each floor that has those windows. They're south-facing windows. And those are the courtrooms that are fought over by our judges because they like having the more daylight in the courtrooms. But the other courtrooms that don't have those direct windows have light that there's,
Like
Frank
transoms.
can explain it.
Clear
Yeah,
story.
transoms where the light comes through from the hallway.
Above that wood wall that you see there is a continuous transom of
Right. When
daylight
you say
into the courtroom.
south-facing, is there a time of day where the sunlight could come into the room, or was it designed knowing that like you didn't want people blinded?
We do have shades. There is
Right.
sometimes in the late afternoon, there is sun that hits jurors in the back. We don't have a lot of really direct sunny days in Portland, unfortunately, and so it's not a huge problem, but we do put those shades down, and it seems to do the trick when we have an issue.
And then to the thing
and
you
it's
were talking
only
about.
one of 4 on each floor that
Sure.
has those.
The childcare areas, are those supervised? And if so, who's watching over the kids there while their parents?
Yeah, we use Volunteers of America. We have contracted childcare providers who provide that service. It's jointly funded 3 ways. The service is provided by funds from our court, from our local bar association, and from the county government funds. Yeah.
Just real quickly, I don't want to lose it. The daylight windows behind the jury box is actually the ideal place for a window to be, because if you think about it, the jury is the finder of fact, the light is being cast on the evidence, and but you don't need to see the jurors, you need to see the witness, right? And you need to see the counsel. So it actually works really well. Yeah.
I was going to comment on the child care center. I'm lucky enough in my family court to have one as well. And I was wondering who you had doing it because I wouldn't want my own employees because there's too much there. So for us, and this is New Jersey, we have a local YWCA that we work with to do it. So it can happen elsewhere. You just got to find, what's local. But boy, what a big help, because we all know how bad it is for a client who has nowhere to put the kid, and here you are.
Well, and for us as architects, when we were trying to locate it in the building, it's actually tricky because in the Murrah building bombing, Tim McVeigh blew up the building because of the child care center. He wanted to do maximum terrorist damage. So you also don't want a dad who's seeking to get their kid back to be able to walk by and look in the window and see the kid. But by the same token, you want it on the ground floor. So it just so happened that little garden slot of space that the judges come in through is where this faces out on. So it's a garden, it's private, very controlled, and still safe. So we lucked out on a number of counts. Okay. So this is just kind of the path through the building. The signage is very clear. There's lots of cues as you go along. The crane room says crane room before you go into it. And I don't know, Barb, do you want to talk about the check-in experience and all the mapping of the processes that we did and all that kind of?
Yeah,
it's maybe too much, but
we were solving a lot of problems in our historic courthouse. Crowding and long lines for people, was a real issue in lots of different areas. So we were really strategic in envisioning this process. We worked with the architects to really break down and help them really understand the entire process for each of those high volume courts. They worked with our staff, they observed a lot of court proceedings, they talked to the public, they really got a good sense of what we were trying to accomplish and all the steps that people needed to go through, and then helped us imagine what would be a better process, a better physical, step-by-step process for somebody to follow that would be more logical for the participant in court, that would have more space for us, that we could provide more assistance at each of the key stages of a case proceeding. And so the work that we put into that was really beneficial to us in the physical design of the space and also, redeveloping all of our business processes. What you're seeing there is what we envisioned when we first we're designing the building, again, pre-pandemic. The way we use the space now, we rarely ever have a line of people circulating through those stanchions because we do so many things remotely. We offer a lot of customer service options remotely, so people don't have to come and stand in line to talk to a clerk at the counter necessarily. But we have the space for it when we do need it.
And it's nice that the space is there and it's not crowded, right?
Right. And these are those alcoves I was talking about, lots of different spaces where people can collect, have conversations with a little bit of privacy. These are high tension emotional matters. We didn't want a lot of privacy. We didn't want a lot of individual rooms with closed doors. We wanted to be able to have our staff have eyes on people and see if things started getting heated in any of those conversations. So it's open. There's a little bit of privacy and spaces for people to gather and get comfortable, but it's not so private that we have that worry about things escalating.
And the really cool thing about it is you can see out the windows, it is all trees. In the summer, you have this green wallpaper all around the room from spring to fall, and then it gets multicolored. And then in winter, okay, it's gray, but that's just real because it's winter.
They did a great job of bringing natural elements into the building.
Yeah. Well, one other thing that was extraordinary is during the design process, the county got title to this building. So what they did was move the entire design team and construction team into the building, set us up with offices and internet and everything, and everybody had a desk there. Andre visited us there. I don't know why they're calling me, so rude. So if we had a question about a detail or how this thing went around the corner, we could go look at it and take a picture of it. And it was a really interesting, if you're ever thinking about a building project, it's called construction management as contractor, as constructor. So we had the contractor there, all their subs, all the HVAC guys and the millwork guys and everything. They were there, and we had all our meetings right on site. And even when construction started on the new building, we were still in there, so we could look out the windows and see them doing the excavations. It felt very real. So again, more of the beautiful spaces, all kinds of different kinds of interaction spaces.
But again, the ability for people to collect their thoughts and to do their research, feel prepared for what they're going into is really a key concept in procedural justice that the space allows for us.
And then, better able to accept the outcomes when they come before the judge in this very small courtroom. That's it. So, but this courtroom on the end, of course, gets a giant window. And, it's funny, the security issues, everyone sort of said, yeah, but we're just gonna live a normal life here and not let those threats change it. And so far, it's been successful. Right?
Yeah, the separate circulation systems have really helped. Having secure areas that the sheriff is in control of for people in custody, keeping those separate from the hallways where court staff and judges are walking, keeping those separate from hallways where the public are walking, having court staff private areas that they can go into that the public can't follow them in. Those are all security things that were put into place in this building that our old building really just didn't allow.
Yeah, just for comparison's sake, the old building, the prisoner transport vehicles would pull up on the back side of the building, and then 4 sheriff's deputies would get out and each take a corner, and then they'd press the button, and out of the sidewalk would come an elevator. It would rise up this stainless steel elevator thing, and they'd take the guys and put them on this thing, and just the most bizarre thing that you ever saw. Here, you never see them.
And a real security risk.
Oh. Yeah. Well, in dignity, the perp walk, the media's out there, and all that kind of stuff. Here, you never see anybody until you get in the courtroom with them. So it's the way it should be.
And I don't know that we had a view that really showed it, but in the courtroom, another aspect of that is, fairness for the people who were in custody. Previously, they would, be essentially paraded in chains through the hallway, where classes of school children, people appearing for all sorts of matters, all of our staff were
victims'
really,
families.
dehumanizing to people in that situation. What we have now is custody areas in the courthouse that are not visible to the public. And the courtrooms each have a door that is an unmarked door that enters that secure area. But when the defendant who's in custody comes through that door, it's not apparent to anybody who's in the courtroom that person has been in shackles, has been incarcerated. I think there was a question over here.
What was the cost?
It was about $350 million.
Well, you think about it, though.
And
It's a lot of money,
1% of
right?
that, 1% of that was art?
Yeah.
So 3.5 million, is that?
There's a cap on it. I don't think it goes all the way to
Okay.
the 3.5 million.
We're still
I was
getting
gonna
there.
say-
It's been in phases. So
But
we
again,
have
just to
done
put
third
the
phase.
cost in perspective, it's over 450,000 square feet. So you do the math, can't buy that today. Pre-COVID and post-COVID prices are so different nowadays. And you could have done a lower building somewhere, but not downtown, because downtown is 200 by 200 foot blocks. That fills up the whole block. So there were all kinds of challenges. Like, it took the county a long time to settle on all of this, 40 years or something of trying,
it
and
was
courts
about 40
trying.
years of courthouse design studies that were done before it was actually an
State money,
approved
county
project.
money, all it's funding these projects is such a challenge. But and one of the things that happened, for what it's worth, the on-site CMAR process with everybody there squeezed every bit of contingency and every bit of fluff or float out of that budget. When the county finally signed the contract, there were no contingencies, there were no change orders, there was no anything, because everything had been worked together in a partnership way, instead of the typical, design, bid, build. You go out to bid, the low bid contractor gets the job. The first meeting, he says, well, I didn't figure that, and I didn't figure that, and you can't have that, and guess what, blah, blah, blah. It's all the nonsense, and it takes, 5 years to build a building that could have been built in 3 years. This one was done on time, on budget, in the midst of civil disturbances and chaos and COVID. So amazing things can happen.
Any other questions about any of these aspects of our building that we maybe didn't cover in enough detail? Or any projects you're considering?
Yeah.
With procedural justice, you talked a little bit about the hallways. In courtroom design, did you do anything different in there, or pretty much from courtroom to courtroom, that's going to be the same?
A few things. For example, the placement of the jury box and how the witness is seated and where that is located in the courtroom, where everything was relative to each other. We did a whole lot of modeling of those things, but where we landed is a jury box that is directly across from the witness box, so that all the jurors have an equal view of the witness. In many courtrooms, and in most of our courtrooms that were in our historic courthouse, the witness box is up adjacent to the judge. And what that leads to is the witness looking over to the judge frequently for assurance and validation. And the perception that the jury gets is that the witness is aligned with the judge somehow. And so having all the jurors have an equal view, equidistant from the witness, and having the same ability to see facial expressions and body language and that sort of thing was really important. So that was one aspect of it.
Well, also in that configuration where you have judge, witness, jury, right? The first two jurors have a really good view of the witness and a really good visual connection. The last ones have to look past 12 heads to get to see. So in this configuration, the witness is on one side of the room with the monitors that display the evidence right behind them, and the jury's on the other side and can see the witness, see the evidence all together. One thing you'll notice, there's all kinds of trick photography, right? These are the smallest courtrooms that can fit a handicapped accessible 14-person jury box felony trial courtroom. These are a Swiss watch, because again, we were squeezing every little bit out of that budget and out of that square footage. So they're tiny. I think they're about 1,600 square feet.
Yeah, so social distancing was really fun in those courtrooms.
Yeah, it's.
But one thing, we thought we were being so smart designing all of our jury boxes to accommodate 14 jurors. So we had alternates, and during the pandemic, we found we needed 16, 17 jurors for alternates, because somebody would get COVID or multiple people would get COVID. But this did allow us to add chairs and add jurors to the jury box.
Yep.
We found this building to be really adaptable to things we never anticipated. So something to keep in mind is that when you're designing your new spaces, however you're reconfiguring them, they are going to be used for things you're not even thinking of at the time. Making them future-proof is really critical.
Okay.
Hi, Barb. I assume the new building has secure corridors to escort in custody of defendants. Your old building did not, I
Did
presume.
not, correct.
Yeah, that door, see the white door frame on the left there?
Yes.
Under the monitors, that's the prisoner entry into the courtroom.
Okay.
An elevator directly from the cell block and holding cells on the floor.
And just for fun, on the one beam, there was looks like a quote of something, a 20-ton
20-ton Niles crane.
yeah.
That's original.
That was to move the power equipment in that substation, that power substation. And we were told, Frank can validate, that it was too expensive to move that. And because that was a historic building, the building wasn't going to be torn down. It was just renovated. So the crane remained, and it became the crane room.
Whoop.
Oh,
I've got all day, so this is great.
Yeah, that's good. I hear you on what you're doing with the smaller courtrooms, but do you have a couple that can handle a high volume, high interest trial?
we do. We have, so the smallest of the courtrooms are those that are in that high volume area. It's counterintuitive, but because we designed the space so that the parties could confer outside of the courtroom, those are the smallest courtrooms. Then on the higher levels, most of the judicial courtrooms are the same size, but we have 3 that were designed with a larger well and larger seating capacity for the larger trials. So they're all built to accommodate 4 counsel tables, so we can fit large trials in those courtrooms.
There are multiple defendants and all that, yeah.
And can you also broadcast to another room if it's that big a trial? I mean, some trials.
We've done that a lot.
Yeah, okay.
We have overflow courtrooms sometimes.
All right, okay.
If it's technology, they do it in this courthouse.
Sure. I was curious about the courtroom on the right there and the rather large L-shaped table. Is that like a family court that you expect a lot of people in there, or was that is that reflective of the court that was there, or what was the design choice there?
Really good question. As I said, the courtrooms are all configured the same way and designed to accommodate 4 counsel tables, which can be in different configurations. So you can have 2 in front, 2 in back. You can have them all in L shape. For our family courts, the judges decided that they really preferred to have one in that L configuration because of the extra parties that are involved in those matters. So that's pretty standard for our family law judges' courtrooms. And most of the rest of the judges use the 2 counsel table configuration unless they have one of those larger trials.
And just the large courtrooms, what's the capacity in terms of the public when in the big ones?
They seat about 60.
60?
60.
No, that's cheek by jowl. I mean, yeah. I mean, but legal, that's the legal, fire egress capacity, but yeah. And you really would mostly use that for jury impaneling, right? You don't.
No, we use them for large trials. We do a lot of murder trials, a lot of large complex civil cases
So the
with a
press
lot of
shows
parties
up.
involved,
Yeah.
and so that's when we use those.
Okay.
Cases with a lot of media interest, where a lot of media need to be in the courtroom, we use them for those. So
Great.
what we did is we have 44 courtrooms in this new building. We have 38 elected judges, and then we have pro tem judges that are full-time employees of the court who also work in those high-volume courtrooms. But what we did is allow each of our 38 elected judges to have a primary courtroom that's theirs, and then we have a few extra courtrooms, those larger capacity courtrooms, that are available if we need to move things around for larger trials and different things.
Yeah, really interesting discussion over the notion of my courtroom and therefore my chamber, my courtroom, and then kind of really fixing the plan and reducing the flexibility, as opposed to the other model that we were familiar with was a collegial chambers at the top of the building where all the judges are and all the courtrooms below. The judges didn't want that. So what was the compromise? Well, because of the L-shaped site wrapping around that historic building, that bar along the river is all courtrooms. The L that comes back is all judges' chambers. So every 4 courtrooms has a wing with actually 4+1 judges' chambers on it. Part of the future proofing was putting in 4 judges' offices, but then a 5th conference room that's a future judges' chambers. So theoretically, you could add judges. You could go above 40 judges, 38 now, but who knows over time, and still be able to function. Because again, all judges have access to all courtrooms in the building. So it's a little
And
again,
similar thinking was done, so we have, theoretically, we could have more judges than courtrooms available for them at any given time to where they would be sharing those courtrooms when they had hearings. We do that with the jury deliberation rooms. We also did a lot of studying of the use of those jury deliberation rooms. Not every trial has a jury deliberating, and so we have 3 jury deliberation rooms to every 4 courtrooms, and 4 courtrooms to every 5 judges is essentially the model.
that's how we brought it in on budget.
Any other questions? Thank you, John. He's not a plant.
Where do the judicial assistants sit? Are they with the judges?
They're with the
or
judges.
They are. So they're right outside in a cubicles.
But they're all together. That was another big one. So previously, it was the judge and my assistant, judge and my. There's a suite where all the assistants sit together. They have a judge, but they also work together and back each other up. Pardon me?
So we have judicial assistants and judicial clerks assigned to each judge. It's basically 2 staff per judge to support them. The judicial assistant is essentially their calendar manager, their receptionist, their
What tradition would have been a judge's secretary?
Yep. That's just what we call them in our jurisdiction. Yeah, but as Frank was saying, as Frank was saying, the judicial suites, that was kind of an area of contention during our design. Everybody was a little proprietary about what they had currently, which was a lot of privacy. Not the best for efficiency and managing staff and collegiality and a lot of drawbacks to that, but people don't like to give up privacy. So we sold them on that model with the idea that they would have better coverage. If you just have one judicial assistant and they're out sick or they're on vacation, you're answering your own phone, your calendar may get messed up. So if you have all the judicial assistants for 4 judges in one combined area, it's a lot easier for them to share and cover for each other.
We have one question.
The judicial assistants like that aspect of it.
Did the AOC endorse the moving to not a one judge, one courtroom model? Because we've been doing a lot of work in different states where the AOC is digging, and well, certainly the Supreme Court is digging in their heels, because once they give in one location, it becomes something that's a model for.
Well, it's one judge, one courtroom. Every judge has a courtroom.
Currently.
But for the future.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, they explicitly going to 5 judges for 4 courtrooms, which makes a lot of sense. I mean, the utilization rate on limited jurisdiction courts is probably 60% of the time they're in the courtroom, and on general jurisdiction, maybe 45 to 50.
Right.
But that's very, very difficult for judges to give up. This is my courtroom.
It is.
GSA tried to do that with the U.S. Courts Design Guide, and it's a footnote now. Because
Well, no, the senior district judges share courtrooms in the federal courts now.
Where's this?
The seniors.
The senior judges.
Right, the senior district
judges.
judges.
That is usually where the toe gets,
that was the compromise.
The foot gets in the door. Is the senior judges obviously have to share because they're not there full time. But
Right.
it's a big challenge because a lot of funders, the counties, the legislatures, don't want to build new annexes with a one judge to one courtroom model. They walk in the courthouse, and a lot of courtrooms are dark after 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon. So
Absolutely.
Yeah, the AOC, I think we're fortunate, didn't weigh in on this and stake a position for this for us. So we did not. So we did not have to battle that. We did have to sell this to judges, and really the way it worked is that the judges who were moving into the courthouse got their own courtroom. It's the judges who are coming in the future, not them, who will have to share courtrooms, and so they agreed with that plan.
they're literally in some states they're trying to pass legislation to force it because the issue is the county's the funder for the courthouse in a lot of states, not all of them, and they're pushing back, and the Supreme Courts are pushing back in the other direction. So it's been an interesting tussle recently.
That's democracy.
Yeah, that was a really good question, though. Yeah.
So much
Anybody
to unpack.
else?
Well, thank you all so much.
Thank
Great
you for your time,
conversation.
and apologies for those technical glitches.